Tuesday's terror attack on America has Washington and its allies focused on targeting those who are responsible.
We will go after that group, that network, and those who have harbored, supported, and aided that network to rip the network up.
For many Americans, the focus remains on those who lost their lives and those who are still missing. You're watching CNN's continuing coverage of America Under Attack, the search for answers. I'm Relitza Vasileva at the CNN Center.
And I'm Jonathan Mann. Americans are beginning a national day of remembrance for the victims of the terror attacks. For many, the enormity of the tragedy is still incomprehensible, the scope of the disaster still immeasurable. CNN has obtained remarkable pictures of the aftermath of the attack in Lower Manhattan. This home video is shot from inside the World Financial Center complex, which is next to what remains of the World Trade Center. One observer described the area as the view from hell. Outside Washington, firefighters were back at work at the Pentagon overnight. Authorities say it took about 25 minutes to knock down the new flames that began racing up one side of the gash in the building's walls. Rescuers are still searching for the voice and data recorders of the plane that crashed into the Pentagon Tuesday.
A security crackdown at 2 of New York City's major airports has resulted in at least 8 arrests. All were booked as passengers on flights from Kennedy or LaGuardia airports on Thursday. Law enforcement sources tell CNN the group includes at least 4 people who were seen at one of the airports on the day of the attacks. They say the 4 were taken into custody for carrying fake documentation, including one man who was posing as a pilot. The sources say immigration issues also played a role in their arrests, but they did not elaborate. They say all had booked open-ended tickets with no return date, and that raised a red flag. Kennedy, LaGuardia, and New York airports were all shut down late Thursday as part of a security ground stop. Incoming flights were allowed to land, but takeoffs have been halted. In a separate development, Philippine President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo says the Philippines and the United States have conducted a raid at a hotel in Manila in connection with the terrorist attacks.
There was a joint operation between the Philippine police and U.S. operatives, including Bayview Hotel, which is just in front of the U.S. Embassy, with regard to some suspected links between what happened in the U.S. and some of the connections that might have been in the Philippines.
Back in Washington, members of Congress were told to evacuate the U.S. Capitol late Thursday. A suspicious package was the cause. Lawmakers were allowed back in less than an hour to get on with their business. And just hours after the scare, the White House and Congress agreed on a $40 billion emergency aid package. The amount is twice the White House had originally requested.
Investigators have found the data recorder from United Flight 93. That's the hijacked airliner that crashed in western Pennsylvania Tuesday. The data recorder was discovered in a crater left when the plane slammed into the ground. It has now been sent to the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington for analysis. Authorities say it may provide vital information on that thwarted hijacking. Most U.S. airports resumed operations Thursday under a set of stringent new security measures. By afternoon, more than 1,200 domestic flights were flying above the U.S. Flights from overseas, though, remained banned. There was one exception, however. Airlines that had been diverted to Canada after Tuesday's attacks were allowed to bring their passengers back to U.S. soil.
Horror and shock gripped the U.S. public after Tuesday's attacks, which killed people from around the globe. Now Americans of many faiths will join President Bush today in a national day of prayer and remembrance for the victims. The president plans to visit the site of the destruction in Manhattan after attending a church service in Washington.
The president will attend a church service here at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., and the president is asking all Americans at their lunch hours to go and attend a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a place of their own choosing for worship, to say a prayer in assistance to the families and the victims of this horrible incident.
In London, Queen Elizabeth II and Prime Minister Tony Blair will attend a service at St. Paul's Cathedral. A memorial service for the dead is also taking place at St. Mary's Cathedral in Dublin. Prime Minister Bertie Ahern will attend. In Berlin, a vigil will be held at the Brandenburg Gate, and France will observe a moment of silence for the victims. Meanwhile, in New York, inclement weather is slowing rescue operations. However, with more than 4,700 still missing, the work goes on. Garrick Utley joins us live from New York with the latest. Garrick.
Yes, despite the thunderstorm, electrical storms, the lightning strikes, which has interrupted the work, the workers are not disappearing, and it is expected to resume as soon as possible there. As we've been reporting, and as we all know, we're looking now at Lower Manhattan. There you can see the lights at the work site and some of the plume of smoke rising there. As we know, what we're looking at is the financial heart of the world, of the world economy. And indeed, the fact that the stock exchanges down there in the Wall Street area have been closed this week, will not reopen to Monday, has had a profound impact on sort of financial psychology worldwide. And I thought it might be interesting to take a moment to recall how Wall Street and that financial heart of the world economy came to be. It was in the late 1700s that some American entrepreneurs, investors in the young America of that time, late 1700s, wanted a place to get together and buy and sell shares in these young fledgling companies that would grow and make the American economy what it was. But there were no stock exchanges, so where did they meet? Well, they met each day under a buttonwood tree, and there informally they bought and sold shares, little slips of paper. Well, over the years, that grew. Stock exchanges were built. They've had their ups and downs. And in many ways, that whole process culminated at the end of the 20th century, the construction of two 110-story twin towers called the World Trade Center. Stop and think about that for a moment. It took more than 200 years to culminate with those two towers that shadowed over Wall Street, in the heart of the financial capital of the world. It took 1 hour last Tuesday to bring them down. Well, just before that thunderstorm struck this evening, that work site where the towers stood was full of activity. And our Alessio Vinci, who's been monitoring the rescue effort there, offered us this report.
500 yards behind me, the rescue operation is continuing. It is now more than 2 days that the rescue workers are sifting through the debris and trying to find if more people or any people can be found alive underneath there. The workers there is a big security concern for the rescue workers. Earlier today, some of the workers were asked to leave an area around the building, as it appears that this building was shifting. Of course, among the many thousands of people who are still missing, there are still 300 firefighters, 30 police officers, and 30 Port Authority police, and certainly the people there who are trying to sift through the debris, they are first and foremost concerned with their security. One of the buildings was also evacuated. As you can see, there is a lot of activity here. Ambulances going in. There is a long line of trucks going inside and trying to take some of the debris. We understand more than 6,000 tons of debris have been removed so far. The Staten Island, they've been brought to Staten Island. The FBI is going through it. The latest official count is 184 sets of human remains found so far. 47 are entire bodies, and only 35 of them have been identified. The number of missing people, more than 4,700. Among them, of course, the Americans who are working inside the World Trade Center, but also many foreigners, many people from Germany, from Japan, from Britain. That number again, 4,700, more than 4,700 missing. I'm Alessio Vinci, CNN, reporting from Manhattan.
And throughout Manhattan, of course, as life returns to more or less normality these days, there's always this question about the New York temperament. New Yorkers being seen as being obnoxious, obstreperous, very difficult. Are we a different breed? Well, one reason perhaps that image exists is because people in New York have to live differently than people across the nation. There are no backyards here. There's really no space. People here, 7 million of them, live close to one another. Many of them live in sort of a dormitory living in these high-rising apartment buildings. Maybe that explains some of this different temperament. We thought it'd be interesting to get a different perspective of the New Yorker, not from somebody who lives here, but from an out-of-towner. Our Bruce Burkhart, who works for CNN and reports for CNN from Atlanta. Here's his report.
As devastating as this was, as unimaginably sad as this was, as much as the worst-case scenario almost looks good compared to this, there's something else that has emerged from the rubble.
Something that is oddly reassuring to a non-New Yorker like myself who's ventured into this city at such a time. Something that proves New York is much more than its distinctive, though now altered, skyline.
Pissed off. It is an attitude, best described as Well, yeah, that kind of describes it, but not completely. It is not a place that likes to show off its soft underbelly.
We hurt, we have pain, and we bleed. We tend to be able to handle adversity better than the average person in the rest of the country.
Are you surprised by New Yorkers and how they deal with this thing?
No, I don't think so, because they've always done this.
And in America, where the physical landscape has changed dramatically in the last 50 years with its strip malls and developments, walking in New York is like strolling through a 1950s black and white movie.
Even now, an enduring sameness, the skyscrapers, the hustle-bustle, the sea of yellow cabs, and that why I oughta pound you attitude.
I hope we strike back, and I hope we strike back hard.
But despite the tough words and a superficial return to normality, people lining up for Broadway tickets, friends meeting for coffee just blocks from Ground Zero, despite all this, normality is still a long way off.
I think the anger is going to come. But right now, everybody you speak to is just sad.
Sadness, almost debilitating sadness, but with it, something uniquely New York, a certain defiance.
Tell Andy and Betty in Indiana, Jen and Joey are fine.
We will. Bruce Burkhardt, CNN, New York.
Of course, the old saying is that New York is a great place to visit, but I never would want to live there. And yet, look at the figures. Others have different views because, according to the most recent census of the United States and the city of New York, the population in this town has actually gone up. Relitza?
Garrick, thank you. John?
There is defiance in New York, and we've just seen it, but there's also sorrow, the wrenching uncertainty of what's happened to so many people. It's brought hundreds of others onto the streets of New York, clutching photos of the missing. Relatives and friends say they're also trying to hang on to hope.
Sadie called at about 5 minutes after 9. She said, "Oh God, please save me." She said she's trapped on the 106th floor. She was screaming that she can't get out. She's trapped, she can't get out. So she was yelling. She said, "Now, I don't know what to do. I'm coughing. The heat is coming. Please, I'm coming. I need water, I need water." And the phone dropped.
We've been hearing lots of good stories about people making it off of really high floors. So we just know that she's one of them, and we just have to figure out where she is.
The first phone call that he made to her was that they are evacuating, and we were all very happy because we were all kind of on the phone, my whole family and my sister. We were all like, "Oh my God, what happened?" Because I work downtown. And then they said they were evacuating. We were all happy. "Go, go, go," said my sister, "go." And then he called again and said, "Oh, you know what, everything's fine, don't worry." He was trying to calm her down. "Stay calm, I love you so much, don't worry about me, I'll be okay." And then they hung up, and then as soon as about 50 seconds later, the other airplane hit. We saw it on the news.
Well, it's really frustrating because you just want to go in there and start tearing things out, ripping them sheet metal. The sheet metal workers are doing it, the steel workers are in there, the pipe fitters, everybody, engineers, Con Ed, I mean, just everybody. And it's frustrating because you have to stop. You hear whistles, signals for you to stop because they think they hear a sound, a movement. They'll stop. I mean, total silence. And, and it might be false alarm, or if it is, you have to, people are so buried down there, you have no idea.